I was going to say a few minutes ago that I know you guys haven't heard me screaming at Zanzibar. That's not because he wasn't here, but he'd been sleeping under the Christmas tree. He loves to get under the Christmas tree. So he'd been being kind of calm, but it just so luckily as I was playing it back, he got up and I had a chance to feed him before I had to go back on. Let me see. A little teeny bit more about the book. Um, she has a real problem with him in his uniform. After the show, he of course he's at the show and she ends up singing this love song and kind of directing it in sort of his direction. Um because she can't turn her feelings off like that. She knows that, this is a terrible person to be with, but she can't just, turn her feelings completely off like that. She has to grieve. And afterwards she's in her dressing room and, taking her makeup off and that kind of thing. And he comes back to talk to her and he asked her, look, let's, it's time for us to be together. There's a war on. There's a war on. And we it's time for us to be together. It's time for us to make love. I want to take you away. It's time for us to have sex. And she's like, and he she's taken off her stage makeup, she's taken off her beautiful costumes and everything, and she's kind of there. And usually there's a bunch of stage door Johnnies around, but when they see him go back there, they're all like, okay. They kind of, get lost a little. Um, so she agrees to go away with him. Um, and but while they're talking, while they're saying, he's saying, look, we need to go away together. I mean, and not only this woman is in a terrible position because not only has she had a Jewish lover, but she has a little half a Jew baby, little girl, and she's in the resistance and like all this stuff, and she's black, and all this stuff is going on in her brain at the same time, but she's still, is in love with this man. She can't help that part of it. And so but she has, okay, he goes to, he says, we'll go away, I'll take you away, we'll go away somewhere. And she says, okay. She finally just goes, okay. And he goes to kiss her. He goes to embrace her, he goes to kiss her, and she won't let him, touch her. So the next day when he shows up, well, he says, well, I have a car pick you up at noon. And the car picks her up, and she goes to and the car takes her to the airstrip. She doesn't know where. She asks him, well, what do I take, what do I pack? And he says, stuff for the beach. And she's like, the beach, what the devil's going on? And so she the car comes and picks her up at noon, and I think that's about where I stopped. I think she's waiting for the car to come pick her up, if I'm not mistaken. That's where she stops, where it stops. So he gets the um he sends the car for her. She goes to the airstrip actually, and he's standing there, of course, in his uniform or whatever. And he's a pilot. He has a airplane, and he's standing there, and he's going to fly them basically to the Riviera. Basically, is where he's going to fly them to. And she says, "Oh, I'm not getting that thing," you know. And he says, "Look, we are at war. My plane has to be marked, you know, clearly marked, and I have to be in uniform when I fly it." So she doesn't want to get in this plane with the swastika. She doesn't want to get in anywhere near him just like that. And so she finally, and he kind of teases her, what's the matter? Haven't you flown before? And she's like, yes, but this is not an airplane. This is a child's toy held together by a rubber band, because it's a tiny little plane, and this is in the early days of flight. Now you have to remember. Um, so he says, well, get in. And she gets in, and they fly. Like I said, she doesn't know where they're going, but they fly the end up flying to the Riviera. And she goes to, he goes, well, look, he goes to try to kiss her again, embrace her again, but he's still in his uniform, so she didn't know. And he goes, well, look, why don't we both change, relax, you come outside. And one of the scenes that I really like is that she goes in her room. Oh, when they're leaving the airstrip, going to this little beach house, you know, she looks up and she sees this chateau like up on the hill, and she goes, oh my goodness, look at that, that's really cool. And he says, well, do you want to would you prefer to stay there, because I have always just been more comfortable here. And she goes, oh, well, do you know the people who own it, or something like that, she says. And he goes, well, yeah, they're my parents, that kind of thing. And she's like, no, I think I kind of like, it here. He has a little beach bungalow little thing, where he kind of, I guess, um spends his time. And she goes into her room, and the cool thing about it is he gives her her own room. She has her own room. And so she goes in to change into her swimsuit, and because he goes, well, it's still kind of early, we can still go get some, we can, I'll come out, and we'll have dinner, and we'll have champagne or something, like that. He's trying to get her relaxed. And of course she's a bundle of nerves. And besides all the things that are going on, she really likes this guy. So she, it's just, it's hard for her. And she comes out, and she's changed her clothes. And when she comes out, he's out by the like the barbecue kind of thing, or he's there grilling fish or something like that. She comes out, and he's chilling a bottle of champagne or whatever. And he's not in his uniform anymore. He's in swimming trunks and a shirt. And I think the line is something like, the only thing that marred the whole situation was the tiny little runes on his the collar of his shirt, because you still have to have some kind of marking. Even though he's in swim clothes, he still has to have some kind of markings that he's a soldier on his uniform. So that's pretty much where I am at with it. I still got to do some work, but that's right now pretty much where it is. So what I wanted to do was, last time when I talked about Native Son, I was like I said before, it's Fear, Flight, Fate are the books. And Flight starts with, um, like I said, Bigger Thomas, he killed the girl, he's chopped her head off, he's put her in the furnace, and he goes home and goes to bed. And as he's leaving the house, he walks by the car, and the car door is open, and he starts to close it, but he leaves it open. And then he goes to he leaves the car door open, and he decides that and he picks up her purse. It has a lot of money in it. So he picks up her purse, and he basically goes home, and he figures, well, if I leave the car out, that'll be more mystery, that'll be more misdirection, nobody paying attention to me. um he goes home, and like I said, his he's just sitting there looking at his family like, wow, these people are, they are not in my world anymore. And his friends that he'd have been afraid of, that he picked the fight with because he was afraid to actually rob a white man, is he's not afraid of them anymore. He's in a whole different sphere than their lives. He's done this horrendous thing, and he knows he's not going to get away with it. So what ends up happening is, he goes back to the house where he goes back to the Dalton's home. And the maid Peggy, she says, well, go get the trunk and take it down to the down to the train station. Maybe she's down there already. Of course, he knows she's dead and she's in the furnace. So he goes and does that, and then they kind of start questioning him, like, why is the car still out? Why'd you leave the car out? And she said, and he answers, well, he was in it, trying to put Jan, just trying to, weave him into the story, because his figuring is this: okay, he's black, but a red, what they call communist, was pretty close to being, when it came between the two of them, it really wasn't that much difference. So the same amount of suspicion, I guess I'm trying to say, would be surrounded in them. So what he does is he leaves. He leaves the Dalton's home after he's, kind of checked the furnace and kind of, made sure he hadn't left any bloody things around, that kind of thing. And he goes to see his girlfriend, who he hadn't even talked to like for in weeks, because of course, she wasn't important, because he had to, he was trying to plan this big, caper, robbing the white man. And, he just kind of put her on the back burner. He paid too much attention to her. And like I said before, when he was at the restaurant with the white girl and guy, she had come over, his girlfriend Bessie, that's her name. She'd come over and said, um, what do you, hey, what's up? And then she sees he's working, whatever. So he goes to her house, he knocks on the door, and she's one of those women, like you heard me say before, I call them reality. She has just no more magic to her, no more nothing. She's just worked so hard. She's a maid or something, or a day worker or something like that. And she drinks, that's all she's got, she's just, that's it. And she's with this guy. And she lives in one room with like a bed in it, that kind of thing. And he goes to see her. She's like teasing him, doesn't really want to let him in. Well, I saw you sitting there with your white girl, that kind of thing. So he says, well, let's go get something to drink. So now by this time, okay, when he leaves the Dalton home the night of everything, it starts to snow. By the next day, it's like a blizzard, and that's part of what goes on, because he really can't get out of the city, but that's later. So he decides to, they go back to her place, I think, or something. And he decides to, what, she's asking him all these questions, and where are you working at, and he's kind of telling her. And so there was this case called Leob, Leob, and Leopold. They were two young rich kids, I think it was in the 30s, I want to say, who had killed this little boy just because they wanted the thrill of killing somebody. And then they had sent blackmail, not blackmail, ransom notes, and trying to get money, but they ended up finding them, and how they found them was the one of them dropped his glasses. So never wear your glasses to a crime. But see, I'd be a SOL because I couldn't see what I was, my crime, if I didn't have my glasses on. So anyway, some kind of way, that's how they caught them. That the lens was a special made lens, and only so many places, but that's a side story. So she starts telling him this. That's when he gets the idea that he wants to send Mr. and Mrs. Dalton, the dead girl's parents, kidnap, that she's been kidnapped, that they've got her, and he wants $10,000 or whatever it is. So to bind Bessie to him, he gives her the money, because he figures, okay, that will kill two birds with one stone. I don't want to have that money on me in case they search me. He says, but also he doesn't want to, in this way, knowing she's hard up for money and that kind of thing, he gives her the money and says, look, keep, hold on to this for me. So he goes back to the Dalton home, and that's when he meets pretty much the stereotypical character. There is a private detective that Mr. Dalton, the dead girl's father, hires to find out what's going on. So this man has gone up into Bigger's room and found the communist pampers and pamphlets. Remember, I told you that Jan had given him the the communist literature. He hid it, but this man's found it, and he starts asking him questions. So this is when he starts, kind of letting out enough line to kind of pull him in, and that's when he admits that he hadn't really taken her to school, that he had taken her to another place, and they had gone somewhere to eat, and she had met this Jan, or her boyfriend, who's a red. And, so it kind of seems feasible. Reason why he's been acting so weird is because he's been lying, trying to help her out. That's how he presents himself. Like, look, I was just doing what she told me to do. You know, she told me not to tell you. So when the detective, and I can't remember his name to save my life, pulls out the pamphlets, he's like, "Hey, you're a red, you're a communist." He's like, "No, sir, no, 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 I'm not. I don't know nothing about it." And then Mr. Dalton goes, "Yeah, he doesn't know anything about it because my daughter tried to talk to him about unions and stuff, and he didn't know what she was talking about." And so he kind of goes, "Whoo, got, dodged that bullet." So he decides that he's going to go and he is going to write a kidnap note. So he goes back to his girlfriend's house, and he buys paper and pencil, and he tries to write with his left hand, disguise his handwriting or whatever. And at the bottom of the kidnapping note, he signs the kidnapping note red, and he draws a hammer and sickle for the Communist Party. And then he goes back to the Dalton's house, because remember, he lives there. He has a room there. He goes back, he sticks the note under the door or whatever, and goes around back like he's supposed to. And he's in the kitchen, and Peggy's fixing him something to eat. She's left food out for him, and he's eating, when Mr. Dalton goes out and finds the letter and comes back in, and says, "Oh, she's been kidnapped." So of course, then they call the private detective back, and now it really is chaos and a mess. And he by this time, his girlfriend, when he goes back to write the kidnap note, he puts his gloves on, he's doing all these things, that he's read about in books, what you do to keep from being caught. And she starts getting suspicious, and she's like, "Where's that girl? How do you know she's not gonna?" Because what he told her was, "Oh, she ran away with a red. I'm gonna write these kidnap notes while she's gone. This ransom note while she's gone, and make some money so we can go away." And she starts going, "Okay, how do you know she's not coming back?" And he's like, "She's not." And she's like, "Well, how do you know she could just come back?" And he's like, "Oh no, she's gone." So Bessie kind of starts putting one and one together. She's like, "Did you do something to that girl?" So that kind of really upsets him. So he goes back to the Dalton home. And when he gets back there, I'm not sure. Yeah, he leaves the ransom note. Mr. Dalton finds it. Mrs. Dalton, the blind woman, freaks all out. And he, meanwhile, all this is going on, and he's still playing the shuffling, clowny, darky, I'm just doing what Missy told me to do, kind of thing. And a they call the private detective, and they end up some kind of way, the police find out about it. And not the police, because they said don't call the police, the press finds out that some kind of kidnapping or something like that's going on. And what Richard Wright does, one of his vehicles that he uses, is that he uses, like I use in Autumn, my character's journal. He uses newspaper stories, that this is what's in the paper, this is what was in the paper, this is, in the newspaper, and he writes these newspaper articles. um some kind of way, I don't know how, but the press finds out this girl's been kidnapped. So they're all in the basement. And I don't know if I'm going to have time to tell that part. Okay, I'm going to wait, because that kind of leads to some um, kind of a semi climax to the story. And I don't want to start it because it's 1935, 36. So I'm going to come back and do that. And that'll probably be the last one, maybe.